It's with the greatest of pleasure that I present to you His Excellency Elpidio Quirino, President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Mr. Justice Spence, gentlemen and friends, I hope that third-degree light will clear off soon so that I can concentrate my mind on the subject I'm going to dwell on at this moment. It has been a great test to my public resistance ever since I arrived in the United States in this trip, to have been subjected to the discipline of the photographers and the radio men. I think that by the time I return to the Philippines, I shall have been completely trained to be an actor at Hollywood. It is indeed a pleasure to appear before you again in San Francisco. 2 years ago, I was honored with your invitation to appear before you, although unfortunately, the speech that I had prepared to be delivered on that occasion had to be put aside because I was assigned a different topic when I got up in 1947. This year, I am given the privilege to talk on anything except perhaps on matters which I took up with the President of the United States, because as long as I am here, the spokesman on that topic should be President Truman himself. But I appreciate the courtesy extended to me to dwell on any subject which may please me, but which I know may be of great interest to you. When I was here in 1947, they wanted me to speak on conditions obtaining in the Philippines then. We had just risen from our prostration after that most cruel, devastating war that ever visited upon my country and other countries of the world. And I was rather still bewildered, if I may be allowed to make that confession, and could not make up my mind as to the real situation of the Philippines then, precisely because I wanted to learn something in behalf of my government from the other countries affected by that world war, in an effort to so develop our country so that it may be in tune with the world readjustment. I made that trip in 1947, crossing the Pacific, crossing the whole continent of the United States, then the Atlantic, then visiting the devastated areas in Europe, from England to France to Germany, went as far as Sweden, went back to Netherlands and Belgium, then to Switzerland, then down to Italy, and from there to the Philippines, visiting the intervening nations and countries on my way. That was a mission which, to my mind, was fact-finding mission, a mission of study and investigation, in order that whatever I may have been able to discover at that time to be conveniently applied to our program of reconstruction and rehabilitation, we may adopt them so that we may not lag behind in the world reconstruction since the World War. I did not only take time to confer with businessmen, nation builders, but also men of learning, heads of states, prime ministers. I had the privilege of meeting almost all the heads of states of the countries that I visited, and carried with me not only new encouragement, but new ideas on the question of rehabilitation of the respective countries. I was convinced then, when I returned to the Philippines, that after all, the problem of reconstruction was not the exclusive problem of the Philippines, which was the most seriously battered among the nations in the Orient. But right there in Europe, I found that not only their industries were battered too, their farms destroyed, their population decimated, their forests almost treeless, their mines all dug up, and the mind of the people also bewildered. I still have a vivid picture of some citizens of Berlin when I saw them walking in the streets, looking down upon every step as if they were counting the pebbles and almost absent-minded. Not so in my country. When General MacArthur landed in my country and tried to wrest from the cruel Japanese the possession and domination of that country, which was trained by the United States to stand on its own feet, we forgot everything that had happened to our country. We were submitted to the cruelest torture, and if I were to recite today the description of what happened during those 4 years of Japanese occupation, you wouldn't think, you would not be able to imagine how our people were able to rise from their prostration. Personally, I had experience of stepping on dead bodies, mangled bodies, taking my family from street corner to street corner under the crossfire between the Japanese and the Americans, and leaving behind me 1 or 2 members of the family while we were doing so in that long but bloody odyssey of 4 days of trip from Ermita to Malacanang. I even had to swim 10 times one dirty creek we call Estero near the public market in Paco, to take the remnants of my family from one end or from one side of the river or creek to the other with my shoes on in order to save some of the wounded and take them to the American lines. What I have seen was also seen by thousands of Filipinos. Our country was just completely demolished. We could even see the landmarks of the streets after the liberation of Manila. The debris was so scattered all over, covering every sign or landmark of ownership among the people of that city. And to think that we had no food at that time, to think that there was not even water enough to be distributed to the thirsty, and to think that we had no money, no property, no food. It was almost impossible to believe that we could still stand up and feel like free men.